International Program Manager at Cartooning for Peace, the international network of press cartoonists created by the French cartoonist Plantu at the initiative of Mr. Kofi Annan, Nobel Peace Prize and former General Secretary of the United Nations. And I would like to welcome you all to this session, Cartooning for Media and Information Literacy. The session will propose a reflective conversation about the role of press cartoons, the role press cartoons can play in media and information literacy, and briefly address the increasing misunderstanding and manipulation some of them are subject to in the current media and information ecosystem. I wish to remind that cartoons, due to their particular nature, a journalistic and artistic opinion relying on satire as a mean to inform, question, and denounce in a few lines, tend to provoke a tension between emotion and rationality that invites the reader to apprehend the information in a different angle, and in such call for critical thinking. A postulate that underlines the Cartooning for Peace pedagogical methodology using press cartoons as a tool for education, awareness raising, dialogue, and expression. If you wish to know more about it, please visit our website, which is written on the slide, and also you can visit the different social media of Cartooning for Peace. So now I would like to deeply thank our 4 honored guests for taking part in this session, and particularly Ms. Yumiko Yokozeki, Director of the UNESCO IGBA, who kindly agreed to moderate the session. So I'm just passing the speaker to Ms. Yokozeki.
Okay, thank you very much, Sylvain, for inviting all of us. We have a wonderful 3 panelists that I'm going to introduce. And just before, let me ask for your permission to switch off my video because my internet connection is not very good today. So my name is Yumiko. I work for UNESCO Institute for International Institute for Capacity Building in Africa. We work on the teacher development. So through that, we have been working with Cartooning for Peace for education. I have a fabulous 3 panelists joining us today. First, I would like to introduce Yemi. Yemi is a cartoonist from Ethiopia. And she was actually trained as an architect in the beginning, and then she became a very rare, I think, female cartoonist. She runs an illustration company called Laughing Gas Design in Addis Ababa. And could somebody put the right picture of us? Yeah, that's great. And for her, press cartoons are entertaining way to teach the public about subjects. And Yumi has been a part of various education projects organized by Cartooning for Peace in Ethiopia and Africa. She's a wonderful cartoonist. I'm a great fan of her cartoons. Next, thank you very much, Yumi. And the next,
thank you for the introduction.
Thank you. And next, I would like to introduce you to Nicola Badou. He's a cartoonist from Belgium. He has been a contributor to Le Vif and Le Express magazine since 1993, so it's nearly 30 years, and to the daily newspaper Le Echo since 2008. His drawings are regularly featured on Jean Courtemans, a blog behind the scenes in Brussels. So his face is a green one, a green creature laughing. It's a very lively self-portrait. He has been the radio and TV columnist. He regularly appears on France 24 during the program Une Semaine dans le Monde as an editorialist. Badou is a long-term member of Cartooning for Peace who took part in a large range of activities of the association and has also faced several occasions of a consequence of misunderstanding and work appropriation. So it is, your story is very, very interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. He was also a vice president of Cartooning for Peace from 2013 to 2017. So welcome, Nicola Badou.
Thank you.
And the
Welcome.
next and last but not least is Arnaud Froga, head of the Africa desk as Reporter Without Borders in France. Arnaud is a journalist and a press freedom activist. Since 2011, he mainly worked in Africa in countries including Morocco, Madagascar, Ivoire, and Burkina Faso. Arnaud has been working with broadcast and print media, mainly Radio France International, France 24, Deutsche Welle, and Jeune Afrique. He's a great advocate for press freedom in sub-Saharan Africa. We also look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Arnaud, for your participation.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Okay, so we go to the first set of questions. It goes to Arnaud. In November 2018, Reporters Sans Frontières, Reporters Without a Border has launched the International Declaration of Information and Democracy, and you recently launched your annual World Press Freedom Index. How did the situation evolve between 2018 and 2020, and particularly in Africa? Please, floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, the first thing I could say that it did not really improve from 2018, unfortunately. We could narrow it down to three main aspects. There is still a huge hostility against journalism. There is still a huge amount of distrust as well, and I think we will talk later on during this this conference with media literacy, especially. And there is also what is probably the most worrying trend is this dynamics to make journalists and journalism irrelevant or invisible in the social communication space. So about the hostility, we in Africa, because I'm mostly working on the African continent, have had 33 reporters killed over the last only. If you take a look at Eastern Africa, for example, in Somalia, for over a decade, we have more than 50 journalists who got killed in this country. So there is still a huge amount of violence against journalists in the world, but especially in Africa. And if you look at the global map, you can see that exactions and blocking of information concerns 3/4 of the countries in the world, or at least in the 180 countries that RSF is looking into. It means that in 73% exactly of the countries we are monitoring and advocating, the information is either partially blocked or entirely blocked in the worst scenarios. And in all these countries, the level of exactions is pretty high and doesn't seem to go down. Sometimes we witness less killing of journalists, but that goes with more arrests of journalists, more aggressions of journalists, more journalists getting targeted on their social media, for example. Youth hostility also takes place at the oral level with speeches, for example. And for instance, the past mandate of President Trump in the United States has had a tremendous effect on how journalists were seen, not only in the United States, but also in the rest of the world. The very fact that he called them enemy of the people, that he targeted them regularly, either at press conferences or on Twitter, had a tremendous effect on the ability of journalists to work in a safe environment. During Trump's mandate in the United States, about 400 journalists got arrested during his 4 years at the United States office. About 100 journalists got arrested. This is completely unprecedented in the history of the United States. Now, distrust. This is something we keep working on, how to make the people trust more journalists. back in the 70s or in the 80s, journalists were the only way in which or channel through which the information was going. This is not the case anymore. And the last barometer we've had showed that 59% of the people mistrust journalists. So the study was made in 28 countries. So it means that more than half of the people who were asked the questions, do you trust or do you mistrust journalists? Well, there was a majority who distrust journalists. So this is also a big issue, and I think media literacy and media education has a big part to play and to try to improve the situation. And cartoon is also a way forward in this issue journalism is facing. Then I'll like to end this short overview with the dynamic that I was mentioning in my short introduction about how journalists and journalism is more irrelevant or invisible, or people are trying to make them more irrelevant or invisible. And in this area, the part played by the social media and the social networks is obviously a very important one. Today, if you'd like to post a very serious journalistic investigation online, well, you might get attention, you might get the audience, but you don't have any guarantee. You don't have a specific regime. You don't have a specific algorithm for that if you post that online. It goes the same for someone who would post complete nonsense or complete fake news. The only thing that matters on the social media is how people will share it widely or not, no matter the seriousness of the content. What I mean by that is that the social function of journalism that consistent with any democracy has no value yet on the social platforms. So fake news goes the same ways and very serious investigations. And obviously, if the only thing that makes the difference is how the people can share that, is a problem, because we know that now there are some cognitive bias that make people more willing to share something that is catchy or sometimes even fake, rather than something that is very serious. So we have to make one of the stakes we're working on is making the social networks and the social media completely aware and completely complying with more transparency and more integration of the social function that journalism is providing the general public with. And this is something very key in the near future, so that journalism can have more space and more visibility, and obviously can flourish, so that we are well informed, and so that we can make informed choices, which is after all what matters about journalism.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Arnold. It was a very informative and useful description of how the journalism and journalists situations are evolved in the world and in Africa. And it is fascinating, and it is very sad that the American influence and negative influence has been inflicting on the rest of the world, that the journalists are maybe less trusted and so on, which should be really the opposite. Now, I'm going to invite Yemi to share with us her perspective. Now, Yemi, Arnold has just told us about the evolution and the current situation of the press around the world, and particularly in Africa. How do you see the situation going on?
Can you repeat the question? I can't listen.
Oh, sorry. How do you see the situation going on for cartooning, particularly in Africa, and particularly in your own country, Ethiopia, where I am also in? So maybe you can start explaining about your cartoons.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'll start by explaining a little bit what I think of what media literacy is. I believe media literacy can be seen from 2 points of view, from the receiver's end and from the content producer's end. And if we here, that's what I tried to depict. The guy on the first guy who's squeezing the radios here is trying to get reliable information. So he's on the receiver end. So media literacy helps the receiver end to be critical of the information that is being received. And the guy on the end, the cartoonist who's trying to draw, but is having trouble to produce his drawings, is on the producer end. So on the producer end, media literacy helps us to produce content that is skillful, and it's not very, it's very inclusive and ethical. So this guy on the first guy who's squeezing radios is trying to find reliable information. These days, most information that's being produced, especially in Ethiopia, it's not free of it's not how do you say it? It's not very impartial. Yes, it's not very impartial. So this guy is trying to find information which is just raw data, so that he can make his own decisions. Especially now that we're having elections, it's very important that information is very clear and raw, so that people can make their own decisions and not being used as a tool for someone's agenda. And here the guy, the cartoonist, he's trying to produce, in Ethiopian context, for example, we have 70 ethnic groups in the country, and you have to be inclusive of everyone, and you have to be at the same time produce a content that doesn't offend anybody. So you have to be historically correct, you have to be politically correct, you have to be culturally correct, so that you don't offend anybody. So when you're on the producer end, it's important to see from different point of views, so that it doesn't offend anyone. Experience on this one is, once I produced a drawing of a patriot. He's wearing an Ethiopian flag, and since he was an old patriot, I drew him with a flag, which just the colors, the three colors, the Ethiopian flag, the green, the yellow, and the red. And people were so offended that it doesn't have a star on it, you know, because currently the flag has a star. So I didn't mean to offend anybody, but it ended up offending lots of people just because it doesn't have a star on it. So here I have learned that we have to be very critical when we produce drawings and inclusive of everybody. So that is the description of the two cartoons I have.
Excellent, Yemi. Thank you very much. By explaining these two cartoons, I think you also explained the situation in Ethiopia, where journalists, including cartoonists, have to be inclusive and respecting each other, and also to avoid misunderstanding. I also have a similar experience. I had a ribbon, three-colored ribbon on my head, and in one of the festivals, and the policeman came up to me and took my ribbon up and said, "This is illegal." So I understand it perfectly. The people can be offended, and then I think cartoonists and journalists, their expressions are on the media. So it is we are all in a very vulnerable position. Thank you very much. This was excellent. Now I'm going to ask to put his a cartoon and explain And also respond to the same question. How is the situation for a cartoonist, particularly in Africa? So over to you, Badou.
Okay, so the cartoon says we'll end up killing that bloody virus. That's what the caption says. This is a cartoon that was published, well, that wasn't published about a month ago because it was refused by my newspaper, and we had a huge debates about it. But then I published it in other with other means, and it's about the great debates we have here in Belgium, which is not Ethiopia, of course. We are a full-blown democracy where freedom of speech is total. So we have a lot of debates, and my job as a political cartoonist is also to stir up trouble and to actually question what's usually unanimously put in some of the media. Because when you talk about journalism, journalism is not a compact and unanimous profession. There is a lot of debate, especially at the moment with the lockdowns that we have here in Europe, that question what we are as democracy. And I think democracy is not only questioned, but it's also shaken a lot here in Europe at the moment. And I'm not quite optimistic about the future outcome. So this, the first one, if you can go back to the first one, it shows that the guys in the bulldozer are the health minister and one of the experts, because the expert, the virologist of the new stars, and they think they can lock everyone down just to kill the virus. It's the zero COVID strategy, but it's questioned a lot. And also within the media, some media are in favor of that, some media are against it. And so we're having really, really harsh debates about this at the moment. But my job as a cartoonist is to actually question these beliefs, because they are beliefs. It's getting religious rather than scientific at the moment here in Europe. So this is what my job is about here in Brussels, which is in the heart of the European Union. And if I go to the next one, the next cartoon, that was published a year ago, and it says conference confinement, how to prepare a population for the rise of a totalitarian regime. And you've got Putin, Salvini, Marine Le Pen and Orban on the other side. So what I questioned about a year ago is pretty much at stake here in Europe at the moment. So we have to be very cautious. We have to make sure that we don't take democracy for granted, because it's not, we can't take it for granted. And we have to be very cautious and very vigilant about how things evolve in countries such as Belgium or such as France, for instance. And if I go to the third one, that's another topic that was published about 2 years ago. It's about the emergence of far-right parties in Europe, and especially in Flanders, which is the north Dutch-speaking side of Belgium. And usually Flanders is represented by a lion. And I wanted to show how the lion is evolving into a wolf, because the far-right party, the Vlaams Belang, is very up in the polls still at the moment. And there's no question about the cartoon that was published in my newspaper, but then I put it on Instagram, and it was banned from Instagram because of the swastika cross, because it was tagged as a pro-Nazi cartoon, and it was censored because there's no other word from Instagram. Not only was censored, but then my page was newly closed, and they told me that next time it would be closed forever. And that raises many, many questions about the media. What is a media? Is a social platform only a pipe, or is it a media? When Twitter decides to ban Trump, it goes to show that it acts as a media. So to me, platforms shouldn't be considered as only pipes, but media. And the other thing about Facebook, I've got a new book coming up this week, and I'm going to use Facebook ads. I can show you the cover here. because you'll see it says all vaccinated. And I'm working with a tech guy who told me that with Facebook ads, you have to be very cautious because they could close my page if I show any publicity about COVID-19. And for instance, if you use the tags COVID, virus, and vaccinations, you could be, your Facebook page could be closed down. So it raises a lot of question about what is the definition of a media today.
Thank you, Badou. Very, very interesting points. That, and then also you are, through the cartoons, you are asking a very critical questions, and then often your cartoons are banned and so on. That is a very much important point for UNESCO, where we tried to advocate for freedom of speech. But when it comes to such a difficult condition, often freedom of speech is not exercised, and a lot of banning. I think we applaud when a Twitter of President Trump was closed, but when a number of journalists or cartoonists asking good questions were banned, I feel a bit, personally, I feel a bit anxious. But anyway, thank you very much for sharing very good examples from Belgium, where the freedom of speech we feel is well protected. But maybe there are some challenges, especially in the time of the pandemic.
And if I can add something about what Yumi just said about being offended, that's a very important point she's making, because in a democracy, you have the right to offend and to be offended. And that's very important, because the only path we need to follow is the law, not the morality you have. And you have the right to offend, and you have the right to be offended as long as you stick with the law. That's very, very important to point out.
Thank you very much indeed. I would like to, I think we have a couple of minutes. I would like to ask Arno and Yemi to, if you have anything, this is a very important, interesting point, that according to freedom of speech, you can be offended and you can offend other people, but is that possible?
For me, I think here in this country, I don't think that's completely possible, because I mean, we our freedom three years ago. Before that, it's even worse. Now there's also some issues that it's not completely free to do to say whatever you want. But I think the possibility that you can say it must be there, but with respect for other people, not to humiliate other people or to make them feel less than you, or like it's good to have your own opinion, to offend others, but with respect. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. So some countries are in different situations. Arnold, what do you think?
Yeah, it's very. I agree with both of them. Actually, it's very hard to have the same speech in every circumstances. If you take the very specific example of Ethiopia, the way people are engaging on social networks with amid enormous ethnic conflicts, it can sometimes fuel tension and lead to violence. So this has to be taken into account one way or another. But I also agree with Nicola when he says that the right to offend someone in a democracy is guaranteed. The right to blaspheme in some countries is also guaranteed, and it's important for the public space, for the debate, that this right is guaranteed, because it's also because the people are doing that as professionals, but not only as professionals, that you create a very various public space and good debates, and that you can put into perspective what some people or the authorities sometimes are saying and doing. So I think in this matter, which is a very sensitive matter, the possibility for journalists, at least, or media, to do that is very important to be kept in democracies. Also, what I would like to point out is what Nicola said about the social networks. I think one of the great danger that we are facing is exactly what he mentioned through the censorship he was victim of, is the kind of role of an apprentice news regulator or apprentice information regulator that the social networks have now. And this is very dangerous because this function goes to algorithm or to people who have not the ability to do that, which is very, very dangerous. The people who are trying to censor are either algorithm or people that are monitoring what's being said, but without having the background to do that. There is no democratic guarantee that what they have been doing is serious or can be opposed with democratic guarantees. This is just an internal process through private companies. And of course, social networks and social media, all media, we call them social media. That's a sign. They are not just a tube or a chat through which goes information, opinions, or stuff like this. This is obviously one of the key actors that is shaping the information and communication space now. So they are doing that because of their popularity and because billions of people are connected to this social media. They have a responsibility, and they should have this responsibility go with democratic guarantees, and that's what we want, because otherwise we can have things getting censored without having the possibility to contest that, and without the legitimacy for those who are doing that to do so.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting, discussion. I hope that all countries eventually will move to where you can be laughed at, or you can laugh at, or you can defend, but still we stick to the law and then democracy and the freedom of speech. I would like to go to the second round on educational use of the cartoons and educational link to the cartoons. I am Japanese. I grew up in Japan up to age 19 when I went outside, and cartoons or manga was a part of my life. And all the children were consuming cartoons, and all children were drawing. If you leave a Japanese child to with a pen and a paper, they will start drawing funny things again, or some artwork and so on. But it is part of the expression that we learn. So Yemi, I would like to ask you, you have been taking a part in education projects using press cartoons in Ethiopia. You have done a great work. A lot of teachers were really excited at using cartoons in Ethiopia, because that was the first time, but it went very interestingly, very well. And we worked together, UNESCO, ICBA, and Cartooning for Peace. Could you please explain the experience you had in this project and tell us how cartoons could contribute to education, and particularly to media and the information and media literacy in Ethiopia?
Okay, first
Yemi,
I'll start. First, I'll start with my experience with teachers and students. So I always see that people are interested in any form of drawing, any form of colors and attractive, especially cartoons. They are very attractive. They have humor and they can easily translate a message without being offensive, even though you're saying a very loaded information. It's somehow you can slide in without offending anyone because of the humor they use. So I find people are most of the time interested when they see drawings. And since they are a tool to easily translate messages, it's very easy to put an idea in someone's head, be it an old guy, be it a kid, be it anyone. So that using cartoons as a tool for education is very important because for me personally, when we were learning, our books were very black and white. And it was, I wish they were more colorful and I wish they were very cartoony. Maybe that's why I ended up drawing cartoons. Now I think about it, it's very dull. And I think adding cartoons to educational books and materials would add interest to students. And what you see, I believe, stays with you longer than what you read. That's how it is for me. You can understand it easily. So it's very important to use cartoons as education tools, and they are very fun and they can express deep messages very easily. One can be represented in a single drawing and it can tell it better, in my opinion. So for that reason, I think it's good to use cartoons in books and educational materials.
Thank you very much, Yemi. Yes, you are right that the cartoons and the drawings make the rather dull teaching learning materials more exciting and colorful. And I think, as you can see, students and teachers were really excited at your workshop. I'm going to ask Nicola Badou for his experience. So, Nicola, well, having been a member of Cartooning for Peace for a long time, and you also conducted a number of workshops in Europe, as well as in Cote d'Ivoire, and how was the situation in Europe, and how would you compare that with your workshop in Cote d'Ivoire in November 2020, and of course for freedom of expression?
Well, the one the Ivory Coast was in 2017. I also went to Tanzania in 2016, and that was quite interesting too. Basically, it's funny because when you do workshops like this in Europe or in Africa or anywhere else in the world, it's basically the same thing. People have the same questions about how you can express yourself and how you can try to understand the world. Because the reason I started doing political cartooning is because I wanted to understand my place in the world and try to put the world at a distance to make it bearable. And so it's really important for us in our job to actually go to schools and to listen rather than speech. And usually when I go to schools, could it be in France or in Belgium or anywhere else, usually I finish the session completely exhausted because I hear so outrageous beliefs and things, but that's fine because they can express them. And I keep telling them they have the right debate without fighting each other, without killing each other. That's what's called a democracy. But the other thing that I would like to point out, which is very important, is the relationship to childhood. When you grow up as an adult, you build yourself a social shield. And cartoons break this shield in 2 seconds flat. Cartoons use a childish device, which is drawing, to address adult issues. And the best way not to become a cynical adult is to remember the child that you used to be. And that is why they targeted our profession in 2015, because it's this relationship, this innocence that we keep as a child that we need to keep with us at least a little bit when we grow up as an adult, not to become cynical. And that's always the message I give to students when I go to schools. And usually the reactions are the same, whether it could be in Tanzania or in Ivory Coast or in Belgium.
Thank you very much. It's very, very interesting that the social shield can be removed by cartoons. And you are obviously stirring up of emotions in the workshops. Good for you. Now, I'm going to move to Arnold. You just mentioned the situation around the world in our first round of questions. In media and information literacy, is media and information literacy more important? It was before, and how do you see the role of press cartoon in it?
I don't know if the question is addressed to me because I didn't hear.
Okay, sorry. So is media and information literacy more important now than before? And how do you see the role of a press cartoon in it?
Yes, I think that media literacy is absolutely essential. Maybe it has never been that essential. Maybe like some decades ago when you grew up, trusting the media or getting information through the media was the only way. So the question of trust was not something that was as relevant as now. And there were as many a source of information or source of opinion expressed and so easily accessible than now. So quite recently, actually about 2 weeks ago, I went to a school near Paris. Children were like 12 years old. 11, 12 years old. And I was really interested to know how they could get access to information, and if they wanted to have good and reliable information, what were the sources they were consulting. And I was quite surprised to notice that most of them are using traditional medias when they want to have access to reliable information compared to what I would have expected. Of course, they're going to social networks, they are going to Facebook, they are going to Google as well, which can be sometimes a good source of information. But most of the answers I got were that they were still consulting traditional media outlets. And they were really responsive to the role of the media and to the importance of what the journalists are doing as far as information is going, and which is, I think, absolutely essential to keep in mind. Contrary to authorities or any stakeholders, journalists, at least professional ones, they can have bias, but at least they have no other agenda than providing the public with good and reliable information through a professional approach and through professional methods. And that goes for the cartoonist as well, through creating debates and ideas. So this is very important because especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've witnessed the fact that there was a tendency for the authorities and for states, for governments, to consider that official information was the only reliable information and the only sometimes even allowed and authorized information, which is very dangerous, of course, because information coming from official sources, sometimes they can be trustworthy information, but sometimes they can just be communication or propaganda. There is an agenda, of course, when you are communicating information as authorities. So independently produced information is absolutely essential. Journalistic information has more guarantees than official information, and that is something that should be kept in mind. But also I'd like to ask my fellow panelists a question because I'm interested into knowing their answers. Do the cartoonists, Yemi and Nicola, do you feel that you've got more freedom now to cartoon whatever you want, or do you ask yourself, can I go this far? How your internal process of drawing is affected nowadays, and do you see any evolution into it when you are drawing? Either because you feel you are censored or because you self-censor yourself?
For me, we were not like in Ethiopia. It was really hard to produce anything very political and survive. 3 years ago, I didn't draw anything till 3 years ago. But now there's a new Abiy Ahmed. He's in power now. It's better, I would say. It's more open. But still, there is now, you know, journalists were freed, the media was opened, anybody can say anything. And then it suddenly became like everybody saying everything, and it's becoming very hate related when it comes to the speeches especially on social media, even in some TV programs. So you think for yourself, do I want to be part of this this hate, like if I add my own opinions to it, or should I remain neutral so that I don't add to this hate? Especially the problem here is ethnic based, religion based, and basically it's very sticky situation. So you just don't want to add to that, and you want to remain neutral, so that I mean, I always ask, where is the red line? Like when you say freedom, where do you put the red line so that people don't pass it? It makes you ask questions like that. Is it where is that neutral line that you don't pass so that it doesn't become offensive? So I would say it's better, but somehow it's hard to navigate because there's so much hate going on. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that compared to 3 years ago, I think journalists, cartoonists, much freer, but there are some spillover effect, and then a lot now we are dealing with a lot of hate speech, especially in the social media. Nicola, what would you say from your end?
Well, I would go the opposite way, unfortunately. As for Europe, as for full-blown democracies, it's becoming more and more difficult because we have this cancel culture thing that's here at the moment too. So you have 7 people on Earth, you cannot not shock one of them out of the 7 billion people. And everybody feels they have the right to be shocked, and they do have the right to be shocked, like I said earlier before. But when you mention respect, where do you draw the line with respect? You might find that what I do is respectful or not respectful, and it goes the other way around as well. So like I said before, you only have to stick with the law. The law is you can't you use defamation, and you can't insult a person. But you can insult an idea, because an idea is not a person. That goes for blasphemy, for instance. You have the right to insult a religion as long as you stick with the law in our countries. And that's something which is very, very difficult to understand for many people. And especially we have to point this out with young people when we go to schools. And it goes the same way for many other things. And like I said about the pandemic, it's becoming religious, the way we deal with confinements and lockdown and stuff like that. And also it questions the relationship we have with democracy. So I think it's getting more and more difficult for us to do our job without being judged all the time, but we still do it. And as for social media, the best way not to be hostage to social media is simply to switch them off.
Thank you, Arnold. It's sorry. Thank you, Nicola, for responding to Arnold's question. It is fascinating that in Ethiopia, in many parts of Africa, that freedom of speech is slowly progressing, and we could do what we could before. But Nicola, you shared with us that the current situation in Europe is eroding, maybe, for some of the freedom of speech. So it is, and then I also took, you can be against, you can insult the idea, but you cannot insult the person. But in many countries, it is very difficult to separate these two. And I think this is where freedom of speech and also the media literacy has to really work on. So thank you very much for excellent interaction. I'm going to ask here, Sylvain, there is one question from the audience. So Sylvain, over to you. Please share with us this question and then ask the panelists to respond. Probably this will be the last question.
Great, well, thank you very much, and thank you for those really great answers from the panelists. Actually, this question is kind of connected to the conversation we just had. The question is, where is the line between freedom of expression and spread of fear, an element which criminal code of many countries have it written? So I don't know, in terms of formulation, it's necessarily clear to me the way it's written, but I think it's making the difference between freedom of speech and spread of fear. But we discussed a bit the question between opinions and the law, and I think it relates to that because they mentioned also the question of criminal codes of many countries that have it written as well. So I don't know if the question is clear, and you may have an answer. I don't know who wants to start on that one from the three panelists.
Well, like I said before, the only line is the law, at least in our European countries, full stop.
And if I may have, of course, there is sometimes interpretation about what is incitement of hatred, for example. But again, and like Nicola said, that's up to a judge and to, according to the law, to decide. And what we have witnessed so far is that most of the time, incitement of hatred or rebellion or public outrage or public disorder or just labels that are used to silence people and to silence the debate. Most of the time, these restrictions that are legitimate and that are in the law are instrumentalized to silence journalists. So it is important. There are some restrictions for freedom of expressions. They are legitimate, but there are very few according to the international standards, and we should stick to them. And we should let the law and the judge decide in these cases. And most of the time, what we witness as press freedom activists is that these restrictions are instrumentalized to silence journalists, and that hasn't changed for the last few years, unfortunately.
Yemi,
or maybe Yumiko, you want to take over?
Okay.
That was the only
Yemi,
question.
Would you like to respond to this question?
In my case, like I said, for me, it's that question is a question for me right now in my head, because, like, for example, someone might say something because they might think that way, and then they post it on social media, and 10, 20 people die because of that specific thing they have posted, because they have fueled the hate that is going on in the country. Then is that guy really expressing himself, or is he fueling what's going on in the country? Because that's exactly what's going on in this country right now. So I don't know where, like, I think now I think about it, it depends on how people receive your information. maybe how literate they are about dividing someone's opinion, and like how they don't relate it with hate. That's the only thing I can say, because it's even a question for me right now with what's going on in the country.
Thank you, Yemi. I am in the same city, so I feel that. And this session has made me think a lot on democracy and freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And I was talking to my colleagues the other day. We do work on the teacher development and education, and we learn how to read and write in schools. So it's a literacy, but the media literacy is something which is not in the curriculum. People do not learn how to, so it's like driving a car without learning how to drive. We don't know the rules and regulations. So Nicola said, I completely agree. The law should be the place where we will go. But in countries, especially in the South, capacity for law enforcement is problematic. So people who should be protected by law are often killed or harmed or imprisoned, and that includes many journalists. So this is a week, this is the day, and then week that we should be thinking of the freedom of expression, the value of the opinions, different opinions, and the capacity to embrace diversity, and then learning the tolerance. And as we see some of the cartoons, and then whether we laugh at it or we get offended, or when we take the guns and the machete to harm the other people, is something that we would not like young children in our children and our grandchildren to learn to be so very offended, or they have to learn how to be offended and then how to offend others, and still the country, the government will protect you. Now, I think we have 2 or 3 minutes. So I would like to ask each panelist to give us the message for this day, for this topic. So I shall go from the way we came. Arnold?
Thank you. So I'll narrow it down to what also Nicola said when he said that democracy is not granted. Well, press freedom is not granted either, and this is a permanent and constant fight, and it's important to remain mobilized, especially because freedom of expression and freedom of information are under threats. Great threats, as I mentioned in my introduction. It doesn't mean that sometimes we cannot see things improving. We've witnessed that in Ethiopia over the last few years, although there are still some setbacks and challenges. But it's very important to remain mobilized, because our ability to make more reliable and trustworthy information accessible to the people will very much determine how the people and the citizen will be able to make their choices and decision in the future. And this is absolutely key for the development of human beings.
Thank you very much, Arnold. Nicola, please.
Well, I would say that democracy is a muscle. You need to use it to make you stronger. And if you don't use your muscles, well, you're in for trouble. And that's the same with democracy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I agree with you very much. And many people who are listening agree. Yemi, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I've learned a lot from this conversation. I see how black and white we are from different parts of the world. And my ending statement would be, it's okay to have different opinions about something, but it's not okay to humiliate, and respect is something important we need in a society to live together.
Thank you very much. And finally, I would like to thank you very much, all the panelists. I learned a lot from you all, and it was a very exciting and stimulating conversation. I would like to share with you all the 4 pillars of learning. Learning is the objective of education, and UNESCO's 21st century document defines learning in 4 pillars: learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, and learning to be. Learning to be is a very profound description of the final product of learning and the education. Learning to be a democratic citizen, learning to be a tolerant person, learning to be inclusive person. But I think this is something we are going to think about, and then the media and the cartoons are immense contributors to learning. So thank you very much for your participation.